Welcome to our sixth episode on the Bhagavad Gita, Energetic Interpretation. So today we will be introducing another character in the Bhagavad Gita who is called Duryodhana. So Duryodhana is a very interesting character. So let's just plunge in. So we're moving also on to the second shloka, and fearful of basically, so the shloka basically is that Duryodhana approaches Drona, who is his guru, and talks to him a little bit about what's going on in the battlefield. So Duryodhana is material desire, and material desire seeks to reinforce itself by consulting its preceptor, Drona. Drona was actually the guru of the Kauravas and the Pandavas. So what is Drona? Drona is represented, according to Paramahansa Yogananda, represents past habit. So obviously there are some good habits and there are not so good habits. But Duryodhana, which is material desire, is right now approaching Drona and basically, talking to him about the array of the army. Now, Drone also represents sanskar, so you may have heard the word ye iske sanskar hai. So sanskar basically means that these are the impressions that are made on the conscious and the subconscious mind by past thoughts and habits. So they're habits that we have already acquired. So that's why they are called samskar. Now, Duryodhan, if you just use the word, then dur is difficult, yud is fight, and duhyam, duyudham yasa is one who is hard to be countered in any way. So material desire is hard to be countered in any way. That is the message of the word Duryodhan. Okay, so as you may have noticed, most people do not name their children Duryodhan. So again, we have this picture here of difficult to fight. So Drone is our old habits. So when we feel threatened, or our material habits or our material tendencies seem threatened, then what we do is that we go back to our old habits. So our habits will tend to side with our vices. In the Battle of Kurukshetra, Drona was the archery teacher of the Pandavas and the Kauravas, but he chose to side with the Kauravas in the Battle of the Kurukshetra at the start of the battle. Okay, so moving along, this brings us to another really interesting story within the Bhagavad Gita. It's not covered in the Gita, but it's a really interesting story. So I'm going to talk about it here, which is Drona and his childhood friend Drupad. So Drona is the melted state of habit, and any thought or act anytime performed exists in the samskar of the body. This is the impressions made on the body through past thoughts and actions. Drupad is dispassion. It is distaste for material enjoyment because of the deep spiritual ardor and the divine devotion. So there is a story in the Mahabharata where in the beginning, Drona and Drupad seem to be friends because they apparently go to the same Gurukul. Their teacher is the same. So Drona actually thinks that Drupad is his friend. And so again, the shloka is Pashya etam Pandu putranam acharyam hatim chamum vyudam duryo drupad putrena tava shishyena dhimata. So he's talking about Drupad's son Dhristadyumn. We will come to that, but let's go back once to the story of Drona and Drupad. So when habits and sanskar manifest its material tendency. So what happens? Drona goes to Drupad, who is a king, and basically wants to ask for 2 cows or 1 cow, something like that, for his son Ashwathama, who wants milk. Now, up till now, Drona had just been mixing, rice powder with water and giving it to Ashwathama, saying it is milk. But then he decided that he's going to contact his friend Drupad, who is a king, and is going to ask him for, 1 or 2 cows. So Drupad goes. Drona goes to ask Drupad for favors. Now, spiritual desire, which is Drupad, basically tells Drona to get lost, literally, and he spurns the company of habits, of old habits. So the story of Dhristadyumn is that he is the son of Drupad and he is born of anger. He is born of fire. Why is he born of fire and anger? Because Drona actually has the Pandavas to attack Drupad and to win his kingdom. And then after winning his kingdom, Drona actually gives back part of the kingdom to Drupad. Okay, so I'm just going to, the story, we're going to go a little back and forth. So Drona retaliates and takes revenge on Drupad and makes it a prisoner. Who is he making a prisoner? He's making Drupad a prisoner. Who is Drupad? Drupad is spiritual ardor. So what that means essentially in all of this is that, you know, when we decide to become more spiritual or to improve our habits, or you know, become spiritual, it is our habits that are the first people that interfere with us. Not people, but you know, our habits begin to interfere. So suppose you decide you're going to meditate today and your habit says, oh, but it's my tea time. Or let's say you decide to, you know, read a spiritual book at night and your old habit, the Drone says, it's time to sleep. So, you know, what happens is that your old habits begin to interfere with your spiritual ardor. So that's what it means by Drone taking Drupad as a prisoner. So your habits are making a prisoner out of, you know, our spiritual ardor. And then, and then the story, of course, continues. And then what happens is that Drone decides that he is going to fight Drupad, and he brings an army, and the army is basically the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and they overpower Drupad. So there's another story in that. We're not going into that story right now. And then he wins the entire kingdom of Drupad, which means habit has overcome Drupad entirely, but then he gives him back the southern kingdom. Okay, now what is the interpretation of the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom? That's the most interesting part of this whole discussion here, is that the lower kingdoms are, the southern kingdom is the lower chakras, and the north, which is the upper kingdoms, are compelling tendencies. So what happens is that initially when we begin to, you know, go into the spiritual path, we may find that our lower chakras are willing to cooperate. You know, for example, we may think that, okay, money is not as important, or, you know, we may find it easier to control our desire to eat, or, you know, other what should I say, other things associated with the lower chakras. What we then find difficult as we move upwards, as we move northern to the northern kingdom, is, you know, our old habits, our thoughts and concepts, if we have any preconceived notions, if we have, superstitions, any other kind of habit which is really in the upper chakras, they are still with Drone. And Drone is what? Is habits. Okay, so that's like a really interesting thing, you know, because I used to wonder. I read the story as a child. I used to always wonder, why did he give him the southern kingdom and keep the northern kingdom? So when I read the book God Talks with Arjuna by Paramahansa Yogananda, I got one part of the story. And the other part of the story, of course, is covered, not the story, but the understanding comes from reading Master Choa's books, where he talks about, you know, the lower chakras and the upper chakras, and how when we start out in life, then it is our solar plexus chakra which controls us. And then as we evolve, there's another chakra, which is the throat chakra, which then divides the kingdom, which is the kingdom is the whole body. It divides it into the upper half and the lower half. And that throat chakra is also called the abyss sometimes. So again, bringing another story is that, God Shiva, for example, is believed to be Nilkant. Nilkant means stop, you know, blue throat. So one of the stories also is that any poison that is there is basically stopped by Lord Krishna, by God Shiva at the throat. So below the throat is the abyss, and above the throat is the non-abyss. So again, this is covered more in Spiritual Essence of Man, but again by Master Choa Kok Sui. And you must read that book if you want to get a deeper understanding of the chakras, and how, you know, different religious schools, different teachers have all basically talked about the same thing in so many amazing different ways that are so interesting. Okay, so once again, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. So the devotee sees that spiritual ardor, which is Drupad, is given back the rule of the southern kingdom, and the northern kingdom is still controlled by Drona. So what Drupad decides, which is now the southern kingdom, which is now in charge of, which is spiritual ardor. The spiritual ardor decides to liberate the soul of all bondage by doing what? By getting a son called Dhristadyumn. And the name of this son and his sole purpose is to destroy Drona. Who is Drona? Drona is past habit. Okay, so Dhristadyumn, the destroyer of habits, the destroyer of Drona, is a bold and daring, confident young man who emerges from the fire. He is actually also a Yajna Sen, which means he emerges from the fire. And he's full of splendor, glory, and strength. It is the calm inner light, the truth revealing intuition, which is bold and unerring, and who is created to destroy the bad habits, which is called Drona, in the battle of the Kurukshetra. So, what is Kurukshetra again? Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre, Samaveta Yutsavaha. Mamakam Pandavascheva Kim Kurvat, O Sanjayaha. That is what the blind mind Dhritarashtra is asking his impartial introspection, whose name is Sanjay. What did my 100 sons and the 5 Pandavas do in the Kurukshetra today? That is what the story of the Bhagavad Gita starts with. And that is the theme, the overriding theme of this entire series is basically reflection of our habits, of our vices and our virtues, and how they interact with each other to create us as a human being, and to help our good habits to overcome our bad habits. So how the 5 Pandavas overcome the 100 Kauravas, in what order. And also, as we go along, if you read the Mahabharata also, you'll understand that there's usually one person that destroys the other one. Between the Pandava army and the Kaurava army, there's like, equally balanced characters who destroy or overcome, the other. And the reason for that is because this is something that actually my friend, philosopher and guide, the late Vidisha Bhattacharya, told me once. She said that if you're fighting with yourself, you're not going to win. Or you're fighting with your mind, you're not going to win, because your mind is basically you and your mind, you and your mind. And your mind can basically develop an argument and then an equally opposite and, powerful argument. Why? Because it's your mind. It can use, both sides in an equal way. So one of the ways to overcome this is to actually bypass the mind. So if some of you are wondering, what does meditation do? What does reading the Bhagavad Gita do? That's what it essentially does. It helps us to bypass the mind, the logical mind, because if you start arguing with your mind, you're not going to win, because it's you against you. And guess what? There's no end to that. So what we do is we basically move to the higher level. We move to the soul consciousness, we move to the Krishna consciousness, or the Jesus consciousness, the Buddhic consciousness, whatever you want to call it, basically the consciousness. And through that, we begin to again look at ourselves in a different way, and to make changes which are appropriate for us to, fulfill the purpose of our life, and to, do good things, I suppose. So that brings me to the end of this particular session. This was about Drona, introducing Duryodhana, and about Dhristadyumn, and about Drupad. So this is the story. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and we will see you soon at the next session, which will be released soon, I guess. Thank you so much.